That's why they went to Australia. That's why they went to North and South America, Philippines, all over the world, looking for land that they could get from the natives. Well, here, a bunch of people were here and started colonizing, and the King of England was just scalping us, taxing the heck out of us. And the people here tried to negotiate, and that didn't fail. And finally, we went to war. And we won. And then through a series of wars and battles and treaties, we won our independence. And all of a sudden, the founders were faced with saying, what do we do now? We don't have anybody to tell us what to do. I guess we're going to have to make some decisions on our own. And so they made all kinds of decisions. They decided to drive on the right side of the road instead of the left side of the road. Decided to use acres and feet instead of hectares and rods, and that way and we decided to use dollars and cents instead of pounds and sixpence, and just all kinds of decisions. One of the very interesting ones is we decided that we were going to speak English. And we are speaking English by one vote. So I was talking to a client one day about this, and he said, yeah, and do you know how we got that vote? How they won by one vote? I said, no, but I bet you it's an interesting story. He says, well, just before they were getting ready to vote on the language, two of the guys that were going to vote for other languages went to the restroom, and they locked them in and didn't let them out until after the vote was over. And that's why we're speaking English today. Now, the interesting question to ask you is, what would the other language have been? What other language would we have been speaking? Now, you know the answer. French? Spanish? Heidi, what language would it have been?
Probably German.
Exactly, German. There were an enormous number of Germans that were here. Okay, the Puritans spoke German. It was a lot of Germans. Now, the thing that's interesting about this is the ramification that has had for hundreds of years. Now, this is a Philippism. Nobody's ever told me this. I've never read it. I just thought this through, and I said, I'll be darned. I'm going to share that with you right now. So, it used to be that countries would raise an army, and they would go conquer their neighbors. Then they would drag all the women home and make them slaves, and all the guys make them work real hard and tax the heck out of them. And the conquering country would be wealthy because of that. And that's what Alexander the Great did. That's what the Caesars did. Genghis Khan, that's the way it was for thousands of years, it seems like. Okay. Then somewhere along the line, they started changing that a little bit. And they started, instead of sending out an army, what they would send out is their merchants. And the merchants would start doing business, and then they would send in the army to protect their business interest. So, but the army came later. In fact, you've always heard of the English-Indian War, when they were trying to keep the people in India down. I always thought it was the British Army. No, the army belonged to the East India Company. It was a company army that was fighting the Indians. They were there protecting the company's interest. Interesting, huh? Now, if you were a native and you were living in some country and the people that conquered you were French, like in Vietnam, guess what? You learned French so you could talk to them. Okay, if you were in South Africa, you started speaking Dutch because that's the language or Brazil, Portuguese, South America, Spanish. Okay, because that's how you could relate to these people and do business and make some money for yourself. So the English were particularly good at having these colonies, and they had them all over the world. In fact, the saying was that the sun never sets on the English Empire, the British Empire. So people all around the world were, the language of business was English. Now here's what's interesting. Just as the British Empire was going down, the United States Empire was going up. And we also spoke English. So for hundreds of years now, the worldwide language, first time in history, it's never, ever, ever happened before. the first time in history, the language worldwide, the language of business is English, and it almost didn't happen. If we were speaking German, it wouldn't have happened. Little sidebar there.